Salzman of the Chicago Tribune, MSNBC political analyst Michelle Bernard, and Chris Cillizza of the Washington Post. And I want to start, Michelle, with a brand new Newsweek poll that just came out. Obama among registered voters over John McCain, 51-36, a 15-point lead. The last time this poll was taken, 46-46. What do you attribute it to?
Well, it's a couple of things. I think we were looking for the bounce, or looking for a much larger bounce right after Hillary Clinton, basically dropped out of the Democratic race. So this is sort of a long time coming. But I also think that Barack Obama's got new ads out. He's beginning to to tell more of his story, and I think that this is just a snapshot in time. We really don't know what's going to happen between now and November. I would suspect that the numbers will continue to go back and forth between he and McCain as Obama introduces himself to new voters and McCain does the same thing.
And Jill, when you couple this news with the news that Barack Obama is out of public financing, he's going to spend as much as it takes, what are you thinking right now if you're in the McCain campaign?
Well, first of all, I'm thinking this poll is a little bit of an outlier because we've had a whole bunch of other polls only showing a 3 to 4 point margin between the two of them. In terms of the public financing, the McCain campaign has got to be nervous about this. But they watched as Senator Clinton got outspent 3-1, 4-1 in states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and she still managed to win. And McCain has always run as an underdog without a lot of money. So I guess they figure they're going to just keep on, taping it together with tape.
And Chris Cillizza, one cautionary tale on this poll. John Kerry, back in July of '04, at this point, he was up by 6 points over George W. Bush.
Well, David, you're exactly right. And I think Michelle touched on it and sounded the exact sort of appropriate notes of caution, which is a poll is a poll. You've got to look at the broad cross-section of where things are. My guess, it certainly seems, if you look at that vast majority of polling, Obama is ahead, but I don't think he's ahead by 15. One other quick thing, Michelle mentioned this as well. Obama's new ads are fascinating. It's a 60-second ad running in 18 states. These are states that include places like North Carolina, Georgia, Montana. Heck, Alaska is in that list, David. That's a state that John Kerry lost by 30 points in 2004. It shows how Barack Obama is going to use his financial advantage to expand that playing field. And even if he doesn't win in some of these states, if he can force John McCain to spend significant money in them, that takes away money that John McCain can spend in places like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania.
Well, and Chris, the other thing that does is that if he's able to make some of these states close but lose them, we're starting to get closer to the possibility Barack Obama wins the popular vote but loses the Electoral College. And I want to put up a graphic on the screen that shows how he might do it. Suppose Obama gets huge votes in the coastal states, Illinois and the South, but doesn't win southern states. McCain wins Republican states, Texas and Georgia, but by smaller margins. McCain wins by small margins in North Carolina and Indiana. Both of them split the Midwest. Barack Obama wins Iowa, Colorado, and Virginia. McCain wins Michigan and New Hampshire. Again, Obama runs up the score in the coastal states, California, New York. What happens, Michelle, if Barack Obama wins the popular vote but loses the Electoral College? How will the country deal with that?
Well, I think it depends. We have done so much during this election cycle to talk about different demographics, and I think you're going to see different reactions in different demographic groups. I think, for example, African Americans will generally be very, very upset about this. I think that, after the last election cycle, most of the country was pretty unhappy, it seems, with just the way the system works. You will see African Americans very angered by the situation, but I think we'll also deal with it if that were to happen because it is our system of government. I think, maybe some voters in Appalachia, for example, will be quite happy with the way that the results turn out. I think it's just going to depend on who you're speaking with.
The fact is we went through this in 2000. There's essentially a model for what happens when you win the popular vote but you lose the election. And I think if that were to happen, the candidate who won the popular vote but lost the election would follow Al Gore's lead and get up there and do the right thing for the country. And it would be incredibly disappointing for so many people.
Well, and at the same time, Chris Cillizza, it would be so devastating for the Democratic Party for this to happen the second time out of the third election if, in fact, this does play out this way.
It would, David, but the point you just made, I think, is an important one. I think it's an interesting possibility to talk about. I don't think it's ridiculous to talk about, but I also do think the fact that it hadn't happened in 100 years, it happened in 2000. I'm not saying it's it's not going to happen in 2008. I just think you look back in 100 years of elections that happened once, there's not that much to lead us to believe that in 4 or 8 years it's going to happen twice. It may, and if it does, I think Michelle and Jill are both right. I think it would cause a major fracture in the country, and that's exactly what I think any of us who cover politics don't want.
Chris, what are we seeing in terms of these ads? Barack Obama, his first ad, he's running them in states like Montana, South Dakota, Alaska, places that I don't think Democrats have a prayer of winning in the fall. Is this just a head fake to try to force John McCain to spend some resources in places that he shouldn't normally need to?
Yeah, you know, David, I think we won't know yet. The Obama campaign insists that it is not a head fake, that they believe that they can be competitive in some of the states you just mentioned, including in places in the South like North Carolina and Georgia. Now, the calculus in North Carolina and Georgia is heavily dependent on the fact that both states have a significant African-American population. Barack Obama will do extremely well there. We'll probably see historic levels of turnout. I don't know how committed they are to it, and I don't think we'll know until we see 3 and 4 weeks on how much time and money they're going to spend in the state. The thing I will say, though, is that him opting out of public financing makes it a lot easier for him to put $10 or $15 million into a state that he thinks he might have a shot at, but isn't sure, because 10 to 15 million, if you can raise 250 or 300 million, is a lot different than 10 or 15 million if you're operating on an $84 million budget, which he would be in public financing.
He also needs to find states to potentially offset losses in places like West Virginia, maybe Kentucky, maybe even Florida. I mean, there are states where Democrats need to win in order to win the presidency that he's shown some weaknesses in, and McCain has shown a lot of strength. So he's got to change the playing field around in order to make this all come together. And I would just say that if you look at their strategy from the primaries, the way they went for all those caucus states and came up with wins in places that Hillary Clinton didn't even think to go, you got to think that they have not lost sight of how you win a general election.
Yeah, I think their aim is to turn, at a minimum, turn as many red states purple as possible, with the ultimate aim turning as many red states blue. And I think that he is redrawing the electoral map and sort of piggybacking on what Chris said. I think that you're going to see them really work very hard in the Deep South. You know, I would say that if there's any time in our nation's history when the Democrats might have a chance in some states in the Deep South, it is during this election because of the large numbers of African Americans in states like Georgia, for example.
And Michelle, the poll numbers, and we started with the Newsweek poll at the top of this segment, does that number tighten when it becomes so clear that Barack Obama, he said, you know what, I'm gonna try to participate in the public finance system. I'm gonna meet with John McCain. He never met with John McCain. He's not in the public finance system. Will that hurt him a little bit in terms of the issue of him being a sort of different kind of politics?
I don't think it's going to hurt him at all. I think it might have hurt him more if he decided not to take public financing. As much as so many Americans in the Democratic Party love Barack Obama, we've also seen a lot of Republicans who changed their registration to Democrat to vote for him. Getting over the hump of being the first African American president is going to be quite difficult for him, and I think a lot of people would have questioned his judgment if, given all of the things that he has going against him, if he opted for public financing when he's going to need every dollar he can to try to win this race.
Michelle, Jill, Chris, we'll be right back with you just on the other side of this break. We'll be back with the roundtable for more of the Politics Fix. You're watching Hardball only on MSNBC.